So here we are. It is official. We are back. 4D Trinity returns. And as always, I am so very grateful for your presence, for this divine community to share information. We are remembering together how to forget. Remembering is forgetting, and forgetting is remembering. And what is it that we are forgetting? What is it that we are forgetting? We are forgetting limitations. We are forgetting the stories that we've been told that cause us to continue repeating circumstances, repeating patterns, addictions, habits, nuances that keep us in the matrix, nuances that keep us performing things in the same way, that keep us repeating, really, memory. Memory is that which is this continuation that we are all surfing, we are all co-creating, and that we are all plugged into this aspect of memory. And it is the memory of all that contains these records that we think about of being the Akashik records. It is that aspect that brings us back to thinking, how do I know who I am? How do I know how to automatically do certain things? How do I have the gift, the talents of certain memory to be a singer, to be a performer, to be a pianist, to be a gardener, to work with the land, to have engineering or mathematical skills? How do I know these things? Where do they come from? They come from the Akashic records. They come from that divine cosmic landscape. And for now, we're going to call it the ether. Through which all is recorded in the universe. Every part of you that has ever existed through all time and space, even before time and space, is here. It is in the Akashic records that we are constantly drawing from to generate our experience of this simulation, to generate our experience of the world. If you didn't know as a child what a tree was, what the sky was, what clouds were, how would you interpret them? Would you eventually come to that awareness yourself? If you didn't know that you were a body, if you were unconscious and then suddenly became conscious, you would begin to mark aspects and parts of your reality as memory. And I hypothesize that in the beginning, right, of humanity, of human beings on this planet, being with a level of unconscious interaction with the environment, unconscious presence with the environment, until at one point, one of us realized that we have this body. One of us realized that there is a significance in the seasons and the turnings of the day to night, that there's a significance in when we plant our seeds and how they will come to manifest, that there is a significance in a woman's body and the monthly menstrual cycles, that there is something happening. There is a program that's running everything. So what is the memory? Everything requires a set point in order for it to be, for it to become. And the hypothesis speaks to the very first one of us that became conscious, began to mark time as memory. They began to consciously remember a significant experience, whether it was the menstruation of a young woman in the clan, whether it was the first kill of a young tribesman. This became a significant aspect, a memory, something to be remembered, something to keep track of. And that's what the Akashic records are. They are a big keep track system that we are continually drawing from in order to continue to replicate, to generate this simulation within the matrix that we experience. So from that first one of us that was conscious and marking on a rock, on a shell, on bones, these significant things that have taken place, I hypothesize that this is how the grid matrix began. The grid matrix is the matrix of our collective consciousness. It is the superposition of all ingredients in this cosmic kitchen, whereby we co-create our reality, so to speak, in this dimension. Memory. Who are you? Who are you? We think about crystals have memory. We think about water as having memory. We think about cellular memory. If you've done healing, you're aware of this aspect of cellular memory, how healers might say, oh, it's in the cells, your memory of the pain, of the trauma, and to clear it, to do a significant amount of healing, perhaps, to clear that memory so that you can reset and find yourself in a new timeline, one where the pain is gone, one where the healing is for you. And so you have a different experience in this third dimension. Memory in the DNA, right? There's genetics, there's also epigenetics, but there's this idea of, oh, I'm a diabetic because it runs in my family. All women in my family have breast cancer, etc. These are all stories. These are all stories in the grid that we are plugged into, that we continue to generate and bring into this third dimension as our experience. Land holds memory. Your body holds memory. We think about the Akashik records, and we think about all memory of every single person. So when that first one of us decided that it was significant that we begin to mark time, as soon as it took just one of us to realize, to become conscious on that level, there's the other one of us saying like, oh, you're a body, I'm a body. This world is a body. There's all of these aspects of this body that are activated, that are generating, again, this simulation that I experience in the matrix. If we think about ourselves as these ancient tribes people, right? We realize like, oh, we make fire, we discover fire. We put our hand in the fire. Oh, there's a memory. We realize perhaps there's a certain element of getting burned, of having a certain experience that marks in time. And then so from that memory of one of us having that experience for the greater whole, there's this story of like, don't put your hand in the fire. Don't put your hand in the fire. You're going to get burned. And we learn that as a child, right? We learn to look both ways before we cross the street, just in case. Everything that we are living now is from the Akashic memory, from the Akashic records that we have collectively through all time, space, and dimensions, through all lifetimes that we've all been here, generated and created. And that Akashic memory is contained in one place. We think about the library, but it's also within every single particle in the universe. It is said there's only really one of us here, one soul, right? Broken up into these fragments, like a hologram. There's really one particle broken up into many different particles. Well, what is that one? Ultimately, that one we can think of is God, is source, is love, is the primal element, the primal beingness before that which is created comes. And that's where we're getting back to. We're remembering how to forget the stories that we've been told, that we can't put our hands in fire. Well, aren't there so many people? There's a guru I saw in Malaysia, and he did a 48 or a 72-hour sit in a pyre of fire. And I was there for perhaps the first 8 or 12 hours when they were creating the fire pit, and when he actually stood in it and sat for several hours. I'm going to post that at my Grid Mind Science here this week, a picture of him. We were able to take pictures. This was in Malaysia. And he was able to sit in the fire. So he was going beyond the story in the Akashic, wasn't he? He was bringing a different dimension of experience for all that were gathered there. And now as I convey this concept to you, for all of us that would hear it, that these stories that we're told, they are only stories. And these stories are contained in the Akashic. So who have you come in with? We think about, or who have you come in as? We think about when you're born. You're given records. You're given records by your family. You're given records through your DNA, right? You're given records of this third dimension, a name, a religion. You're given records of certain health attributes, who you are, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, what your abilities are or not, what is good, what is bad. We learn the polarity of this grid matrix as it's being passed on to us and through us from our elders, our guardians, from our ancestors, the stories that we're told about this world. And so we agree, unconsciously perhaps, until we learn a little later on that there's other ways to see things, other ways to do things. And perhaps through our spiritual or transcendent experiences, we have realizations that allow us to go beyond the stories we're told. So like the guru who sat in the fire, he said, he didn't say anything actually, but his actions were such that I am not of this body, I am not of this world, and watch me sit in this pyre of fire for several days and remained unscathed. So here we have this supernatural ability, this super conscious reality with the capital R that we can all tap and pull from, that which I call fourth dimensional consciousness that is in the heart. That is the tiny space in the heart that Drunvalo, Melchizedek speaks of. That tiny space in the heart, that 0 point spiritually, metaphysically that we speak of, that is that portal to the now. It is the portal in the sun that takes us beyond the play of the matrix. It takes us beyond rerunning the stories. This happened to me because it happened to my ancestors, or I'm working out this karma for my ancestors, or perhaps in just this one life being contained, that we've had certain experiences, right? I got into a motorcycle accident, bubble of light. I got into a motorcycle accident and now I'm terrified to get back on the bike. Well, that's PTSD, right? That's a memory. That's a cellular memory. Now that memory is ingrained in you and your consciousness, running through the grids, being projected back to you, but by that subconscious plane of the Akashic. The Akashic records are the subconscious memory hall of records of all of us through all time, space, through all dimensions. And it is said that this is the plane also, that every aspect, future, past, exist from each of those one individual experiences. I had a boyfriend and he had been shot in the eyeball, literally in the eyeball. And he had a glass eye. And this was years ago that he had healed from that. Yet sitting in the cafe, every time someone would come in the door, he would get startled. He would have to look. There was this reaction that he was unconscious of that was so deeply embedded in his subconscious, his survival mechanism to survive, to not get shot again, to not get hurt. And so this was this PTSD, right? And so how much PTSD are we walking with in this life? How much memory, just from this one life, do we continue to perpetuate? We're running reruns of the Akashic record. And the point that I want to drive home, because I have some reading to do with us today, but the point that I want to drive home is that we can go beyond the Akashic records. We can go beyond them into the space of the sun, draw from the nowosphere, God, source, where there is no timeline, where there is no time as we have learned it to be, that is not in any sequence of past, present, or future, but to have a spontaneous realization of that which has not been realized yet here under the sun, in the grid matrix, and a part of the Akashic. So the Akashic memory holds all of these memories that we are participating in. It is constantly recording every thought, every nuance. I like to say that the Akashic Records holds all of the selfies that you have deleted. And here in the third dimension, in the grids, this is where all the pictures that are on your phone or on your computer exist. Yet if we go deep enough into the Akashic, we're going to see all those pictures that have been deleted, but they still exist. I can be upset at someone, and in the grids here in the third dimension, these are the strings, the puppet strings through which I am perpetuating a certain reality because I've been hurt. And so I'm connected to you through the grids in this hurtful way. And I'm going to continue being hurt. And as long as this is a memory within me, I'm going to co-create through that cosmic superposition kitchen of grids. Through our collective consciousness, I'm going to draw on that memory to perpetuate the emotional, mental circumstances that will keep me in that bind. And I'm going to be in a certain timeline specific to that. But the moment I decide to change my mind about it, and that's the good news, that you can change your mind. The moment I decide to change or have a healing or forgive you, then time and space drop. You come into the now moment, and suddenly there is a realization of how you will be new, how things can be reborn into the new, into the now. And so you have a new timeline. You have a new set of experiences to be with. And so you are no longer drawing from that part of the Akashic record. Now it's still in the Akashic records, yet the version of you that you are displaying now is that version of you that is drawing from a new level of grids, from a new paradigm of how you would be plugging into, and so co-creating feed forward, feedback loop through this matrix in this simulation. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. I'm going to be doing some reading. Let's talk about for a moment this Indra's net idea. Perhaps we've heard of it, right? We imagine this webbing, and you see these little dots, these little orbs, these little pearls, these jewels. Indra's Jewel Net by Barbara O'Brien is a much-loved metaphor of Mahayana Buddhism. It illustrates the interpenetration, intercausality, and interbeing of all things. Here is the metaphor. In the realm of the god Indra is a vast net that stretches infinitely in all directions. In each eye, that being those jewels, of the net is a single brilliant perfect jewel. Each jewel also reflects every other jewel, infinite in number, and each of the reflected images of the jewels bears the image of all other jewels, infinity to infinity. Now we have the sense that infinity is a part of time, eternality, right? And this we can debate later, but that which is eternal is. It doesn't belong to time. It is not limited to time. Yet that which is infinite belongs to time, begins to timelines. So whatever affects one jewel affects them all because of this interpenetration. The metaphor illustrates the interpenetration of all phenomena. Everything contains everything else. Remember the one particle, the one soul that we are, fractalized as in this experience. Everything contains everything else. At the same time, each individual thing is not hindered by or confused with all other things. So somehow, I can have this body and you can have that body, and we don't get confused by who is who, because we have a certain track record that we're pulling from through our individuality and how it is expressed in this dimension. And this Indra's net idea brings us into this aspect of interconnection, of how we are that one, we are that whole. And ultimately, again, this journey is about remembering and forgetting, to forget the stories we've been told, to forget the pain of our ancestors, to forget really pain, trauma, anything that has a polarized spectrum, value spectrum. That which we zero out allows us to rest in the now, to have a whole new experience. And so the Akashic records are the main board of memory from which the grid matrix of collective consciousness is a subset of. We imagine the Akashic as being the motherboard, containing all memory. Remember, it has all of our deleted pictures. And that's pictures in our mind, pictures in our heart, pictures everywhere, through all space-time, through all the lifetimes you've existed. But which pictures are we using now? Which memories are we using now? Which memories are using us? There is no Akashic record without you here. You, the body that you are, the memory that you are, that you speak, the thoughts that you think, are just rerunning what you've been told, what you've been shown, the stories. No one in my family ever goes to college, so I might as well not even try. Everyone in my family gets sick from this, or whatever those stories are of limitation. Those are the things that we are forgetting so that we can come into that greater realm of remembering that we are not those stories. And it's through remembering that we are not actually the stories of the Akashic that we find that liberation and that freedom. So I'm not saying the Akashic memory records are bad. They simply are. Yet which parts of them are serving us? Later this month, October 30th, right before that big full moon, I'm going to do an Akashic record journey meditation. And I do this with clients, but this will be the first time I'm guided to do it as a collective, like an open Zoom journey for all of us. Because the Akashic records hold memory. There's this aspect that we have left information, we have left divine gifts for ourselves in the memory of the Akashic that will help serve us to remember again that which we're ready to forget, to bring us closer to the light. For instance, I had a Reiki client here just this week, and sometimes when I share a Reiki attunement, I will receive a download for them. And this download came that for this person from a past life, they were an artist. And the guidance was for them to keep an eye out for a certain painting that looked a certain way, because in that life, they were a mystic. Yet the mystics, unless you were monastic, were looked down upon. And so they were unable to be this mystic freely in their community. And so the way that they channeled their mystic information was to place it into painting, into their art. And the guidance was that they were this mystic in this past life, creating these paintings, and for them, for this individual to look out for this certain painting with very specific attributes in it, and to be in the presence of that art, for that art would transmit information that would serve them now. Now, where did that come from? That came from the Akashic. That came from the Akashic records for them. And that's the kind of work that we'll do in the meditation if you're guided to join October 30th. And I'll be sharing more about that. I'll be posting about that, so you'll be reminded. So we leave artifacts, we leave information for ourselves in the Akashic. So again, I'm not saying that it's a bad place, but I'm saying that it's not the only place. And if you've had any spiritual realizations and activations, then you know there is, right, that field, that place, that space beyond space and time. Okay. Now, also, what I want to say is that with this individual, it was very interesting because they had said that they had gotten into this rut of wanting to be creative, having this creative inspiration in their life, yet they would constantly be bogged down with having to clean the kitchen, with having to clean and cook. And she was laughing and she said, "This is my grandmother. This is totally my grandmother's grid. This is my grandmother's memory that I feel like I can't help but like do these reruns. Like she knows that she's in her own individual self and able to have new experiences. Yet the memory of grandmother, for whatever reason, she had agreement with, right? Because it's all agreement. All the memories that we keep rerunning here from the Akashic, these are agreements that we've either unconsciously or consciously connected to. And so we are rerunning here until we remember or realize the aspects of them that we would continue perpetuating or not. So she's saying, oh my God. And I thought, well, this is brilliant. This is brilliant because, you know, I often will draw this grid matrix, and really, art is so funny, right? So, but the idea is that if the Akashic is the subconscious, the collective subconscious, the motherboard of the grid matrix, we just imagine metaphorically the grid matrix is above us. Really, it's within us and all around us, as is the Akashic. But for the sake of this idea, we can imagine that here she is, sandwiched in between, rerunning this subconscious memory of the grandmother. And it's plugged into her so strong that she can't help but connect by way of those memories into the grid to feed forward that information into the grid, and the grid feeds it back to her. Yes, you must clean the house. Yes, you must cook and clean before you do X, Y, and Z. You have to take care of others. You have to do all this stuff. And it sounds, really simple, but these are the little things in our life that we're like, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this loop? Right? So the idea is that there's a subconscious plane that is running us. What programs are running you from the Akashic, and are they serving you? So let's keep going. Timelines, the nowosphere, nothing new under the sun. Well, what I want to talk to you about is this idea of the simulation. And I did a post recently at Grid Mind Science. I'm creating a screenplay for a movie called Grid Mind Science, where all of this information will be contained in it. And the post reads, what if the simulation you are experiencing reflects the direct expression of the words and thoughts you repeat? What if the coordinates of your experience are created by the metaphysical values of time and space you excite by way of your words and thoughts? Would the unconscious use of word and thought keep one bound, repeating simulated variables of past, present, future timelines that have all happened or are happening via the Akashic memory? If so, how do you get out of the matrix, off of the Akashic rerun, and out of the simulation, out of the matrix? How do you create the highest simulation you can imagine? Do you blip out of the simulation and into no time when word and thought are rooted in the now? We'd like to offer this as a place to begin, and yes. The grid matrix of collective consciousness acts as a cosmic kitchen containing all the ingredients, all thoughts of all minds, and all feelings of all hearts that we all have access to, and across all time. Question is, what ingredients are you choosing to create your reality with from that cosmic kitchen? With each thought and word we draw from the grid matrix to either create a holographic regeneration of what we've seen before, what we've been before. Again, this is the Akashic memory plates. Are we just rerunning these memories, being a victim? I know in this life, my book, The Reiki Apprentice, you'll see, most of my healing paradigm and my realization has come from healing these aspects that I was a victim in this life. Well, how old was that memory? How long have I been a victim? How many lifetimes, how many variables and aspects, past, present, and future, did that ignite that got to be healed so that I could collapse the wave function of myself, of my memory, to be aligned with the now, to be aligned with love ultimately, so that I could realize a new version of myself, a new timeline. Okay, so we access this plane of superposition soup and become projectors through which more conscious channelings may be revealed through us and back to us. So the set points of our mind, the set points of our thoughts and our words I offer are what creates the coordinates of our experience in the matrix, in the grids here on this third dimension. So the question is, do you find yourself in the simulation with the little s or the large S, in the reality with the little r or the reality with the large R, right? And we think about the self with the little s, and the self with the little s. That's the version of you that's not showing up in your full power and authority. That's the version of you that is bogged down with fear, with pain, right? Withholding love, really. And the you with the big S is that which is the channel for love. What if the matrix contains the simulation, and beyond both reside that which belongs to no timeline as the now, which is what fourth dimensional consciousness is all about? And I know there's a lot of talk about 5D, my friends. My job is to be a spokesperson, an ambassador, if you will, for fourth dimensional consciousness, which again is the consciousness of the heart. Some would say it's the Christ consciousness. It is that realization of the now moment that is outside of time and space, you see. And it is, in the Grid Mind Science teachings I share, it is the science of healing and ascension. And according to these teachings that I share, there is no ascension, no real ascension without healing the patterns of limitation, of victimhood, of pain, of trauma in our lives. And it is simply through the healing of those timelines, those healings in the grids, in this dimension, that then are rooted as memory in the Akashic that we then run off of, those records. So remember, you're born, you're given memory plates. You're given, remember, are you old enough to remember vinyl records? Okay, these are your records. You're born, here's your name, here's your religion, here's your this, your that, your physical health ailments, your whatever, all these stories are. The grooves in the record are the grids that you're given that belong to this third dimension. What are you doing with them? Hello? It's God. Hey God, what's up? It has been so long. I mean, not really. For this show. 4D Trinity. Yes. Oh. Ah. Okay, we're going to read from Walter Russell's Secret of Light. God says hello and blessings, everyone. God would like to offer that God is a verb, love in motion. It is the realization of love, of oneness, of unity. Thank you, dear God. Yes, we're going to read Walter Russell right now. Thank you. Okay, let's get to it. The Secret of Light. I'm going to read, what are we going to read? Page 205, the life principle. Nature records every action and desire of the body. Likewise, every conscious desire and thought of the soul in those cosmic elements which are called the inert gases, helium, neon, krypton, argon, and others. These cosmic elements which will not unite with the physical elements are the basis of God's recording system, by means of which every thought and action of every creating thing is stored in them as seed extensions from sun and earth centers for repetition until their purposes are fulfilled. For repetition until their purposes are fulfilled. So what he's saying, what I feel he's saying is that this is the ether. The ether. Right? And then we know in Sanskrit teachings that the Akasha is the ether element. And the ether permeates all space and time. It permeates our body, yet it is not a part of our body. But ultimately what Walter Russell is saying here, that I'm reading from it and offer to you, is that this recording system is innate. It is. And since the beginning of time, if there is a beginning, and again, is that beginning what I said at the very beginning of this show, one of us who became conscious, who went from unconscious to conscious, and who began to mark time, who began to realize consciously the seasons, the daytime, the nighttime, what sickness is, how to get better, what parts of the earth feel powerful. Don't put your hand in the fire, or do put your hand in the fire. You know, the ether of this entire universe and beyond it, I mean, everything you can imagine is the recording system, is the Akashic records. And so it's everywhere, it's within you, and it's all places at the same time, and we are constantly drawing from it. Imagine you are like a puppet on strings, right? And I use this analogy often with the grids, because right, we know this, Dr. Joe Dispenza, right? What you think about, you bring about, right? And all thought and words are elements in the grid matrix, the superposition, cosmic soup that has all of the ingredients of all memory from all of us through all time, space, and dimensions. And this grid system of the grid matrix of collective consciousness is a subset of the Akashic. So remember, the Akashic is the subconscious. It's that constantly recording everything. You know, if you have crystals, my crystal's here somewhere, right? Crystals are recorders. Our bodies are recorders. Cells are recorders. DNAs are recorders. Everything is recording everything constantly. But again, we can choose what we're replaying. We can choose what we're plugged into. And so what is plugging back into us to become our reality. So we think about this paradigm that we're in now. You know, we can think about Lemuria, Atlantis, and all of these different times. And right now, we're only working with this since the last ice age, which is about 11,000 years ago. And please correct me if I'm wrong in my research. I'm doing my best to, put all these pieces together. But if we're only looking at this one little piece of the pie, right, we're only using these parts of the grid matrix to co-create certain realities in our experience. I mean, look at us. We all have this collective agreement. whether it's about gravity, whether it's about, healing and sickness. Yet there's variables, right? Some of us hold an awareness that you need to go through chemo or have specific Western medicine to heal cancer, and some don't. Yet both exist, like Indra's net. Both qualities exist. They're interpenetrating, but they're both individual at the same time. But at any moment, that person who is going through chemo can decide or have an inspiration to start to think about things in a different way and perhaps go about their healing in a very different fashion. And so suddenly they're drawing from a different part of the grid. They're drawing from a different memory of the Akashic records to pull through them that memory and to make it so in the cells, to make it so in their DNA. Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, everyone. Well, all of the greats. I mean, Deepak Chopra. I sat and I did a lecture with him a couple years ago here in the desert. I live in the Coachella Valley. And the big takeaway I took from it is that he's just saying, in his Chopra Center, that they're just really documenting that the DNA is malleable. Every thought, every word you speak, the DNA is reconfiguring. The RNA is reconfiguring to create a new pattern by which the DNA will replicate itself. So we've heard of spontaneous healing. Well, what happens? Whoa, that person just forgot. They just forgot about all of the reasons why they should have pain, why they should be stuck in the grids, stuck repeating that Akashic memory. So there is a place beyond this. There is a place beyond this place. We live in a holographic universe. Everything comes from and is interconnected to and with everything else. We think about what Nassim Haramein says. Time is really information recorded on the structure of space. Time is really information recorded on the structure of space. Again, that's the ether. That's the Akashic records. Everything is recorded. But which recordings are you listening to? Which recordings from the Akashic are governing your experience now? You can change those recordings. You can change, you can change the recordings you're listening to now, because what happens is that because all of the undeleted files are in the subconscious realm of that Akashic memory that we all hold, it's in us. And it's in one place at the same time, that library, that divine sacred library. Depending on what we are drawing as memory and triggering and activating through our DNA, through our cells, through our words, through our minds, that combined subconscious, unconscious, conscious aspect of self, that is what is creating those grids that we plug into energetically and then draw back to us, that create our third dimensional experience. So as I was saying earlier, we're really thinking, about these most recent timelines. You can plug in, right? We have channels. We have channelers that go in and they draw from memories of Atlantis, memories of, Lemuria, memories of galactic star nations, etc. And there's so many, these are all stories though. Understand that you don't need to belong to any of them. Some of us feel very, very, rooted in that there's a galactic, there's these galactic armies and that there's these wars happening. And that's your story. That's a story. Those are stories, if you would have them. Yet where we're going in fourth dimensional consciousness is realizing that we don't need to perpetuate those stories. Those that feel called, that have that true aspect of pulling from those stories and working out the forces of light and dark in this third dimension, that's their calling. But that is still in the matrix. That is still matrix. That is still the part of the simulation. War, fighting, that's the dual plane. That's the binary system of the grid matrix. And all I'm offering is that we don't have to keep repeating those stories. You decide, though. And sometimes we can decide consciously here in the third dimension and start thinking and speaking a certain way. Yet what are the Akashic records? That subconscious that's like so deeply rooted. How many patterns are we plugged into there? How many sacred contracts, divine agreements have we made with others or with things and places that are perpetuating an awareness of what we're doing now? For some of us, as we realize our work here now We can go into the Akashik. And like my friend that I did that Reiki attunement with, where the download came that she's a mystic from a past life and she's created paintings, and these paintings are here now. And this was in biblical times when I got that download, when she was making these paintings. So you have left artifacts, you have left memories for yourself to pull from, to draw from for this life now. And what I propose is that ultimately these memories, these aspects that we've left for ourselves, are these divine mystic memories that can help us remember that we are not a body, that we are actually one. Like in the Walter Russell, what does he say? These cosmic elements, which will not unite with the physical elements, are the basis of God's recording system, by means of which every thought and action of every creating thing is stored in them as seed extensions from sun and earth centers for repetition until their purposes are fulfilled. Will we need this grid system? You see, this is it. And I have had conscious experiences, and perhaps you have too, where you're not in time and space anymore. Right? Whether you take a medicine journey, you're with the mushrooms, you're with these sacred aspects, or maybe it's just your light body activation realizations. And you go beyond the stories and you realize the oneness, the unity, and you no longer require to rerun the patterns. For instance, I was going to the gym yesterday. I got into a car accident in 2013, and it was the biggest thing that had ever happened to me. And it took years, chiropractic, physical therapy, to get through it. It was the most pain. I didn't even know that we could have pain on that level. For the most part, I've gone, I'm done in a bubble of light, and I'll put links to this on my YouTube here later. A link for my timeline video, which we're going to keep doing. We're going to talk more about that because more and more downloads continue to come. But timelines, bubble of light. And I say bubble of light because when you have a thought, when you speak something in this third dimension and you place it in a bubble of light, what happens is it goes into the bubble of light and it doesn't run in the grid. So it doesn't become a part of the paradigm that has to rule you in this third dimension. Now it becomes recorded in the Akashic, but it doesn't have to be a part of the subsystem that you are running from, or that you are running through that program by in this third dimension in the grid matrix. So I had to sit there in the car. My back was feeling tweaky, and I'm sitting outside of the gym and going, fuck this timeline. I'm so over this. It's been 7, 8, whatever years since this car accident. You know, so let me reinstate consciously with my mind, with my word, my affirmation, that I release that timeline, that I release that version of myself, that I release that memory, that fear, that I unplug from those memory records, those memory plates from the Akashic, and I allow myself a new/now experience to be in this body, to be in this place as. And I went in and I was fine. And I remember then I forgot about it. I go into the gym, and then about half an hour in, I'm doing something and I'm going, oh shit, I forgot. Okay, let me keep forgetting. I don't need to dredge up that memory in my body mind system anymore, to have that pain, to have this weakness, this vulnerability. Yet at the same time, because that thing does pop up from time to time, what I will offer you, if you have a similar experience, is that it's of service. If you do all these healings and all these works and then it goes away, but then it comes back, whatever it is, there is something there for you. And ultimately what I offer it is that something that brings you back to God. It is that something that brings you back to remembering that you are not a body, that you are not of this world. You're in the world. But when we have those divine superconscious experiences, we see beyond the matrix. We see beyond the realities that we've been shown, the stories, the pain, the ancestral trauma. You do not need to walk with that anymore. And I speak about this at length in one of my live streams earlier this year or last year. I consciously released all of my ancestors through all time, space, and dimensions except one. And I tell you, my experience of revelation is continual here now on a level that it has never been before, since I released all of their pain, all of their trauma. I released all the contracts that I had agreed to, that I have to perpetuate this, because there is a sense for most of us, well, no, I'm not going to speak for you. There is a sense for many of us that I've spoken to that this is our last incarnation here on this planet. And so we have a lot of loose ends to tie up, don't we? Or do we? Do we have to interact? We don't. These are just stories. but perhaps for your karmas to come to that fully realized place where we don't need the grids, where we don't need the Akashic records anymore, where we realize our oneness, we realize our God realization, our unity consciousness, where we are perpetual motion vehicles, where we are the Taurus, where we become 4D realized in the heart center. We know the Taurus, right? That level of consciousness, or what I share, that's heart realization. That is you being realized in the unity of the heart of the one on this earth. Earth and heart, you move those letters around, it's the same thing. And it is a moment by moment experience of realization. And we draw from moment to moment synchronicity. That's your synchronicity, that's your flow. When you're drawing from that which is not in the Akashic records. What? Yes, that which is beyond the grids, beyond the stories you've been told, that keep the matrix going. I mean, look at this world right now. I don't mean that in a mean way, but I mean, look at what's going on. History repeats itself. You know that saying, history repeats itself. And what I offer is that as long as there are unhealed grievances, yes, history will continue repeating itself in all of these different mutations and all of these different variables, all these different timelines. Let's think about the many worlds interpretation in quantum science. Hugh Everett, right, who was a student of John Wheeler. Okay, this is by Philip Ball. In its most familiar guise, the many worlds interpretation suggests that we live in a near infinity of universes. Infinity, again, meaning time. What is beyond time, what has no timeline, is the now, is the synchronicity, is that divine happenstance. But once it does come into you and through you as a realization, then it is recorded in the Akashic. Then it is in the grids. But up until that point that you realize something that has not been realized for you before, or even for the collective, then it is present for those who would draw from it. We think about Nikola Tesla. How did he know how to create a cell phone or any of his divine discoveries? You know, is it from all of the memories, the conglomeration of all of the memories of all of the other inventors that had come before, and all those bits and pieces of information? You know, he called himself a seer. He could meditate, he could see, he could draw down that divine now inspiration that would take those stories, those elements, those particles, those pieces of information, and put them together in a new now way. And so create something new for the collective. Where was Velcro before Velcro was realized? All of the elements were existing, yet to put them together in a certain way that would be that thing, right, happened in an instant. Let's keep going. All superimposed. So all of these near infinity universes, all superimposed in the same physical space, but mutually isolated and evolving independently. In many of these universes, there exist replicas of you and me, but indistinguishable, yet leading other lives. And that speaks to that Indra's net aspect, where there's all of these aspects. We are all parts of the one thing, containing all the same pieces. We're all the one, like that divine Holy Grail hologram, which is what I call it, when we realize our fourth dimensional consciousness and we come into our Taurus consciousness, we come into the Holy Grail hologram of self that has more and more now moment experiences, where we are less and less bound to repeating the stories of the Akashic, and from that point only repeating or using the ingredients that is in the Akashic and in the grids to co-create, to be inspired as Tesla is or was, to generate that which is new, to be a channel for that which is seeking to be birthed as new in this earth plane. So let's think about this idea of the many worlds interpretation. There's the sense of our multidimensional timelines, right? And we think, here's you, and you're single, and you're great, and you're happy. Oh my God, but here comes them, and you fall in love. So at one point, when you were on your own, you had all of these certain timelines you were existing in. On another point, here comes love. Oh, now you're a thing, and now you're with this person. Many worlds interpretation would say, like, as soon as you made the choice to be with this person, now there's an infinite amount of possibilities and potentials of different timelines that can be generated through this. You can be with them for a week, you can break up, you can get married, you can get divorced, you can have children. Those children can be sick, those children can be healthy, right? You can live happily ever after. Whatever it is, there's all of these variables through time and space. And in the Akashik links in with that many worlds interpretation in the sense that for every choice that we make here in this third dimension, the Akashik records all of those many worlds interpretation variations and variables. So there's all of these versions of you that exist, right, in this hologram as potentials. So at any moment you can pop in from being the person who's sick to being the person who's healthy, from being the memory of that person with the back issues from the car accident, or from being not that, from just being healthy in your body as it is now. Every action that we display, every choice that we make in this third dimension spawns a different attribute, a different timeline of us. And all of those memories, those timelines going forward through space and time and backwards, and all of those variables exist in that subconscious realm of the Akashic records. And it's accessible to us at any point. I want to check our time. Wow. I feel like this, we might have to come back and do more of this. And I know there's comments. There's so much here. And we may have to come back and do a part 2. I do want to read more from Walter Russell's Secret of Light book. It's the next page, 206. Man is aware of himself as an individual, but his concept of what constitutes his individuality is vague. His individuality is what he unknowingly interprets his immortal self to be. His self or soul never changes, never appears or disappears, but his individuality constantly changes to forever fit the changing concept of what he interprets his immortal self to be. So again, we get these records, we get these stories. I am a woman, I am a man, or you can change that. I was a man and now I'm a woman. There's all of these different variables we can have here. But what is sustaining, what is ever present is your soul, is the part of you that is unchanging forever and ever and ever. And that is God. That is you as love. Oh, okay. Yes. So let me finish reading this. I have something that I want to share with you. As every man gradually comes to know the light of his self in him, God, love, light, source, his individuality changes by the constant uplift towards that increasing awareness of his centering omniscience. Again, this is when you start to turn the light of enlightenment on, when you start to heal your life, there's no going back. I mean, you can go back into your addictions, into your depressions. You can rerun those Akashic memories again. Yet the potential, you start to build this momentum of now, of being in the nowosphere, of being without those memories. And you learn how to allow, not to sustain, not to generate it on purpose, but to create the correct conditions through the vehicle, the energy body that you are, that simply creates the correct conditions for your consciousness to be aware of that which is outside of time and space, outside of the records, outside of the grids as we have known them, outside of the stories of who and what you are, what you've been told you are. As greater awareness of the light of the universal self comes to man, he gradually loses his individuality and becomes more the universal self. When mankind has become fully aware of God in him, the play of man on this planet is finished, his purpose fulfilled, and the individual man ceases to be. Man loses his expression of life in matter to find eternal life in the light. I've been with this grid stuff. If you read my book again, it's somewhere. Here it is. The Reiki Apprentice. Okay, the links at my link tree at my main page, Tuesday May Thomas. And it's at my website as well, Tuesday May Thomas, on Amazon and Kindle if you want to check it out. But I've been working with this grid information since 2000, and you'll read about that in the book if you're guided. This is the first grid book I ever made. Okay, so I want to read you something. And this is from, almost 20 years ago. It's just that the mind gets quiet and you can hear yourself being truth. You can hear yourself atomically whizzing as those atomic structures. Have you ever had that experience? Enlightenment meditation, in the hearing of self resides all truths as one. And it is in this one, it is here that we get it all. We can then express and explain in such scientific and interdimensional levels. And they say, how do you know? And it simply seems that you are one. And as one, there is no separation, no separate thought. And so at once you come full circle into yourself in knowing, in adjustment, in stillness. In attunement with the universe, it's secrets, though they're not really secrets. We are consciousness itself. Consciousness is the grids, and grids is the webbing, right, that holds us together. It is the intergalactic fascia. It holds us all together. If we eventually get it all, and this speaks to that last sentence I read from Walter Russell, if we eventually get it all and at the same time, will this whole consciousness leave? Will this gridding simply disappear? Will the Akashic records disappear? Will there be any need for it anymore if we are with an absolute non-need for it to be? And that's what I'm saying. It's the nowosphere. So it's 11:56. Here we go. I want to play Alan Watts for you.
Underneath opposition, there is love. Underneath duality, there's unity. The Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle. You see, here's that weaving principle.
Okay.
The things hold together.
Underneath duality, there is unity. What I offer is that this is us. Love, light, God, source. We are remembering that together. Beyond the matrix, beyond the Akashic records, this is the grid matrix. Beneath that, the subconscious realm, is that strata of the Akashic records. Where we're going is the realm of the heart. No one is without love, for love is the force that holds universes together. By simply embodying love, you are living the new myth that will create the wave home. From here on, your direction comes straight from the universe, moment by moment. When we live moment by moment, we are outside of time and space. This is the path of innocence. It's not knowing, right? We know this, that we, or maybe we're realizing that the less that you know, the more you know. Really, that you don't know. This is the path of innocence, the path of trust. That's that mystic gift of trust. It's in the heart. It's not in the brain. It's not in the mind. It's not in the grids. The grids in the Akashic, they contain the heart memory, but they are mostly mind memory. Here, each step is walked only once, and the universe only speaks in the voice of the present, and that's where we are going, my friends. There is so much more. I'm so grateful for you. It is 11:58. My grandmother's calling on the phone that I am recording the Instagram live with. Thank you for the love hearts. I know there's so many comments here, and I want to answer the phone, but I want to, we have 2 minutes, so I'll call grandma here in a second. Oh, I'm so grateful. Thank you everyone for joining. Oh shoot, see, and now you touch something and then everything goes haywire. Don't forget, the lessons from that experience exist only to prepare and guide you for what is to come while on the journey. Thank you, Neo. Absolutely, Neo.10. I really appreciate that. And so again, October 30th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'll be doing a 90-minute Akashic Records retrieval meditation. Keep an eye out for information. I have a monthly love letter. Again, all of my links are at the link tree at my Instagram. So let's just take a moment to end here. We'll continue this conversation, and I'd love to do a live where there's question and answers, where you actually hop on and go live with me, and we take intervals to discuss this, because we're all remembering this stuff together. I don't know it all, but this is a part of my path of this remembering really consciously and bringing this information coherently together, that we can remember together that we are love and that we are light and that we are, yes, a part of this structure of this third dimension, but that we are so much more than that, and actually so much less than that. So I thank you for being here. I don't know when this is going to run out in a second, but let's just take this moment to drop into the heart and to remember the love and light that we are, and to allow that love and light to be awakened, that now moment to moment awareness. Let's lean into that and allow it to lead, allow it to inspire, to heal, and to bless us through all time and space and dimensions that we go beyond time and space. And so it is. And grandma's calling. I'm going to have to pick it up. Hi, Grandma. Grandma? Blessings. Grandma? Thank you, everyone. Blessings. Are you okay?
Speaking to the hearts that are not